Well, it's 7 o'clock, and so welcome to everybody who's packing our council chambers. I guess you guys got cheap tickets tonight. Thanks for coming out. We have a good agenda on tap today, so hopefully you're here and you stay the whole time. Ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest on a Municipal Conflict of Interest Act from any members of council. Okay, first, the presentations announcements. I'm really excited that we have our Centre Wellington Youth Council here. We're introducing them to council today. So this is a really exciting group that were established this year. We really felt like we wanted to move ahead and have the voice of the youth community represented here in Centre Wellington. So I'm really pleased that they're going to be here, and our communications coordinator Kendra has been very active in making sure they're organized and bringing them here tonight and making sure that we do everything that we can to get the youth voice in at our council chamber. So she's going to introduce them. So welcome Kendra, and welcome Youth Committee.
Good evening, Mayor Linton and members of council. I have the pleasure tonight to introduce our first Centre Wellington Youth Committee. So first we have Rachel Routley in the green jacket. She's a local activist and student involved in many initiatives in our community, such as student walkouts and environmental protests. She is passionate to see her community improve. Next year, she'll be moving to Ottawa to pursue a career in computer science in our nation's capital. Next, we have Stanley Sinclair. He's currently enrolled as a grade 12 student at Centre Wellington District High School. He became a member of Centre Wellington Youth Council to gain a greater understanding of local politics and to bridge the gap between local youth and our local government. He's very excited to have an opportunity to improve his community for all the youth. Next, we have Madison Hill. Madison is a grade 12 student as well at Centre Wellington District High School, who is focused on business, the arts, and having a positive impact in all aspects of our community. Madison joined in order to give herself and the youth an opportunity to share their thoughts and opinions on how youth can be better supported and heard in Centre Wellington. Already, she's very excited about the ideas and plans that this council has come up with, because she feels they'll be a large step towards making our community a more inclusive for all youth to be a part of. Though she'll be leaving Centre Wellington for university later this year, she is very motivated to leave a very positive footprint for the youth in Centre Wellington. Next, we have Rachel Smith. Rachel wants to ensure that she was an active member of our community and wanted to find a way for youth opinions to be heard. She wants to make a difference and help those who aren't sure where to start. With the help of our council, she's been able to form a presence in our community, make connections, and ultimately create a positive impact. She will be leaving as well next year for political science at Laurier. And Ashley Bell, she's not here right now. She's actually doing a 3-month, exchange, in Spain. So she'll be back in time in June for our final mayor's golf tournament and anything else we do to wrap up the season. She joined the community because she wanted to challenge herself to make a difference in her community. She wants to be a voice of today's youth and help empower others to do the same. We also have 2 of our mentors here. So we have Ben, just here. He's currently working full-time at Portage as a clinical caseworker. And we also have Fred, who most of you maybe have seen through our tourism office because he works there part-time, and he's also doing his master's at the University of Waterloo. So next I'll introduce Rachel Smith, who's going to come up and do the next portion.
Okay, so I'm going to be going over our code of conduct. So it states that I will actively participate as a positive member of the Mayor's Youth Council. I will treat other members of the council, including my peers, mentors, and advisors, with respect. I will attend and participate all meetings. If I cannot attend, I will inform a mentor or advisor. I will respect other members' opinions, values, and interact with my peers in a respectful manner. I will represent the youth in my community and ensure their thoughts, ideas, and interests are brought forward to make Centre Wellington a better place to live in and grow up in. For our vision, we are a committee of empowered youth, future leaders who are the voice of municipal youth issues and initiatives in CW. We want youth perspectives, concerns, and matters to be taken into consideration when making municipal decisions, and we want Centre Wellington to be a youth-friendly community. For our mission, We are committed to giving the youth in Center Wellington a voice, educate youth, and encourage them to provide meaningful input and action on local issues and municipal politics, as well as providing the mayor and township staff with timely updates and information on issues and topics that matter most to us.
So I'm just looking over the landscapes, the structure aspects. We've got one youth advisor, which happens to be Kendra, the communications coordinator of the township. She's responsible for scheduling meetings, agendas, minutes, and ongoing communication with the youth council. So she's the liaison between township and the youth council. We do have 3 youth mentors, so myself, Ben, as well as another one here that couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately. But the youth mentors are responsible for mentoring, engaging, building relationship, and encouraging the youth of our community to have a greater interest in the decision and need for civic engagement in Center Wellington. So as it's currently sitting, we have 6 youth committee members. Recruitment is an ongoing basis. We're looking at getting about 11 members, which would be the ideal size and representative. And then the community meets about twice a month at the community sportsplex, in the mezzanine or any of the boardrooms that are available. And that's the structure of the council.
So I'll be talking about our first 2 goals. So our first goal is really just about youth voice, and we want to provide more of a voice for the youth in our community. So first off, there's a webpage on centerwellington.ca. It promotes our committee, how to get involved, our mission, vision, code of conduct. And then the mentors have also taken time to visit private schools and high schools as well to kind of let youth know more about what's going on, promote the council. As members ourselves, we're ambassadors. We're there to encourage the youth to get more involved, and also promote the opportunities that we can provide. Also to raise awareness about the issues that youth in CW are facing, and to advocate for those issues. We want to forge some partnerships with different organizations to be able to do so. Our next goal is to promote student employment and volunteer opportunities. So we want to provide more opportunities for students to find places to get those necessary volunteer hours in high school. We're very passionate about promoting this. We're exploring options to find a one-stop shop in CW where students can find part-time employment and volunteer opportunities that are really tailored for their schedules and things like that. And we would like to host a volunteer fair at the Sportsplex. We came up with this idea to hold this volunteer fair. Organizations would be invited to set up displays on opportunities for youth to get their hours and potential part-time employment. We would be inviting high school students to attend the fair to learn more about how they can get involved in their community. One idea that kind of came forward after the latest winter storm, big one, it was a formation of youth volunteer group that would assist our elderly and those with mobility setbacks by offering shoveling of driveways and sidewalk services following a heavy snow event. The youth advisor and mentors will reach out to local organizations to see if and how this idea can be turned into reality.
So I'm going to be talking about our third goal, which is transportation. So getting from Elora to Fergus and vice versa is really difficult for students who don't have access to transportation. So in older grades, some students can drive, but not everyone has that option. A few ideas that we've had for improving the transportation network is to further promote the Ride Well program in schools, as a lot of students aren't super aware of the new initiative. Bike rentals, so we're going to work with the high school who just received a grant for bike sharing and the township to work towards a more bike-friendly community. Promote the trail network at the high school and encourage active transportation methods, such as biking, and continue to support and promote the transportation master plan and its findings. And then our fourth goal is around the environment. So we are committed to doing more to conserve and protect our natural resources. We want to live a lifestyle that's better for the environment. We're working with the township to improve the environmental impact we have on our community. We have 2 planned events already to highlight this. So the trail from the high school to the plaza on Tower Street, it's been identified as one that's frequently used by high school students, but there are no garbage cans on it. So a lot of students will just litter their garbage as they're coming back from lunch. So we've met with township staff, and with the assistance of students, we're going to do a trail cleanup day that will be planted in the spring. We're going to do mulch to clean up the trailway, garbage cans will be added, and trees will be planted along the path just to hope that students get more of an appreciation for their surroundings. And then Earth Day is an event in April, as you all probably know. This year, we're going to reach out to elementary schools across the township and create a Buddy Earth Day concept where members of the committee and high school students can set up times to go to various elementary schools and assist with Earth Day events and activities. This will encourage the younger community members to get involved and be an important opportunity for high school students to take a mentorship role by planning and executing these events.
So I just want to start with saying a big thank you for the council for letting us come out to the mayor's breakfast. I think I can speak for all of us when, we really enjoyed the event, and we've kind of been consistently meeting, building up these ideas, laying down this foundation. So to actually get an opportunity to come out and meet some faces and, put some faces to names. And we had plenty of people give us a warm welcome at our table, which was fantastic. I know all of us felt a lot more welcome after that. And it was just a great opportunity to kind of connect what we've been working on our side and the decision makers and the stakeholders that are in the community that we're, ultimately working to improve and incorporate that youth voice. So I think that was overall a great event for us. We really enjoyed ourselves, and it was just great. So thank you guys for that. Like we were saying, the Earth Day events, it's going to be an opportunity for us to get out into the community and kind of put those concrete steps down where we're really integrating into the community, getting our image, our voice out there, and showing people and stakeholders in the community again that, we're here to be consistent, reliable, we're here to stick around and be there for the years to come. And I think that's really important when we're looking at elementary schools, tying in that mentorship role and bringing those, younger generations forward into this council and really demonstrating that we're here for the long run. Also, what we mentioned was the trail cleanup. So this is going to be our big sort of event. A lot of the things we've been doing so far has been, foundational, putting pieces together, figuring out how we want this council to run and how we want youth to kind of spearhead the initiative. So the trail cleanup event is going to be a great opportunity to revitalize that trail that runs, almost took out the mic, that runs behind the subdivision there from the high school to the uptown core. And just an opportunity to show that, the youth council is involved, and that's an area that sees significant traffic by youth in our community. So I think it'd be a great opportunity to put our image out there. And it's going to be a great step forward to demonstrate what we're all about. And at the end of the day, it ties in with that big environmental piece that, youth in this community are focusing on and are concerned about. And then finally, on our radar, and now on your radar too, is the golf tournament that's going to be coming up this summer. I know Kelly Linton is excited, and we are too, to get involved and, put a working hand in and kind of show that, again, we're here to work with the council. We're here to, give that youth perspective, and ultimately that's going to be an opportunity to, solidify the council, the youth council that is, for, years to come, and potential projects that we're going to be looking at down the line to really expand, what this youth council is all about. But that'll conclude our presentation. I just want to say thank you again, and thank you everyone back here too for listening. I know it can be a little dry at times, but we're really excited to kind of show you what we've been working on the foundational side and the concrete steps that we're going to be taking in the spring to really get the image out there for the youth council and the voice that we want to project in the council, or in the community even. So thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Is there any questions from Councillor?
Councillor McLean?
I'm assuming, based upon how it has been said so far, that if council wants to interact with the youth council, we do it through you. What about if the public wants to do it? And I'm asking for a very specific reason. because one of the goals is to promote employment and volunteering. And I have been, I think frustrated is probably the word, trying to work through the high school to get volunteer hours, get students for volunteer hours for Sensational Elora over the years. And if there is, if the youth council is maybe the new way for me to access these students needing volunteer hours, I'd just like to know how to go about doing that.
Absolutely, through you, Mayor Linton. We've actually had 4 or 5 community members reach out to us, and we had Ron McKinnon from the Community Resource Center come to our last meeting just to go over some of the exciting things that his committee is working on. So we're always welcoming anyone that wants to meet with us to come to our meetings. And yes, I would suggest sending me an email, and then I can let you know when our next meeting is. We try to do it every 2 weeks consecutively, but things like March break come up or exams, they just finished. So we try not to plan our meetings on those weeks because it is stressful for them, and we don't want to take away from their valuable school time. So please just send me an email, any of you, or even if you wanted to just come in and sit in on one of our meetings and introduce yourself and listen to some of the things we talk about, you're more than welcome to join us.
Councillor Dunsmore?
Yeah, excuse me. I just wanted to take a minute and commend these young people for taking the time out of your busy lives and stepping up and doing this. And as I read through your presentation, I was really impressed with how short but high level your code of conduct was, and the fact that the future leaders of this community reference respect in there 3 times. So I want to thank you for that, and you give us hope for the future.
Great, thank you very much. I'm really excited about the work you guys have done so far. Spending time getting the foundation right is really, really critical. And making sure your mission, your vision, your code of conduct is well in place so that you have a real solid foundation to build on. And then looking at the very practical and exciting goals you have for the future, really excited what you guys are going to do. And I want you to get used to being here because I really would like to hear your voice and the youth voice on a lot of the things that we're talking about in this chamber. So hopefully you like it here because it's not always as formal, but we want to make sure that you're here. And I just wanted to say thanks to Kendra. She's put a lot of work into this to arrange it. So I really appreciate the work that you've put in, Kendra. I wanted to thank our mentors, Ben and Frederick. I know you've put a lot of work into this as well, and the mentor positions are really critical to this group, making sure that it has sustainability. And as students, a few of the students are already going to university, so things are always changing. We need to have something that was constant, so appreciate your leadership and the leadership of Abigail, the third mentor as well. And just a big thank you to all the students, all the youth that have stepped up for this. Appreciate it. Do see you guys as the leaders of tomorrow. So make the most of it. Don't be afraid to come to us with your ideas, your creative, innovative ideas, because we want to make sure that the youth group is a place where we're open to those ideas. That's why we need youth, because we're all old here and we get stuck in our ways, and we really do want you guys to be creative and think things through and come up with some solutions that we probably wouldn't have thought of here. So thanks for coming tonight, taking a night out of your schedule, and welcome to this community in an official way. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 3.2. We had Councillor Steve O'Neill, but he had something else come up, so he won't be here tonight. So we'll make sure he's back in the rotation, but he won't be here tonight. So I'll give a bit of a brief Wellington County update. So the county did adopt its 2020 budget back in January. Seems like a long time ago. So the impact is a 3.3% increase, which is a result of 1.8% on the average residential tax bill. So for the residential tax input for $100,000 of assessment, you see an increase of $20. So I just wanted to highlight some of the changes in the budget that contributed to that increase. So I've talked about it a little bit already, but curbside collection contract to provide new and enhanced services for county residents, including weekly recycling and organics collection, bi-weekly garbage collection on both sides of the road in both urban and rural areas, and leaf and yard waste collection in the spring and fall. So those are some changes. There'll be lots of information that's going out from the county, both in the Wellington Advertiser, on radio, on social media, so that you'll be aware of that new schedule. But it's significant that we're moving into organics pickup every week. That's going to significantly add to the life of our landfill site, because organics should not be ending up in landfill. So that's exciting. Planning for the closure of Phase 1 and the opening of Phase 2 at the Riverstown landfill site in North Wellington. That's happening in 2020. There's been additional resources provided to the Wellington Terrace long-term home for the aged to improve resident care. So there was additional staff that went into that building, and that contributed to the increase in the budget. A couple projects, 2020 allocation of additional $6.3 million for the replacement of the Badley Street Bridge in Elora, $3.3 million for continued work on Wellington Road 46 through Puslinch, and the initiation of a transportation master plan to identify priorities and inform future budgets. They're taking a page out of our book here in Center Wellington, so that's great. First full year of RideWell service. This demand, and you heard the member of the youth group talking about this, RideWell, public sharing. I did hear that uptake on RideWell last month was up, so maybe the marketing efforts and the different work that's being done on that is paying off, so we did see an increase there. The continuum of care at Wellington Place, we're working on the business case right now, and it's going to, business case with recommendations are going to be going to council in March. So that's wrapping up soon, and then there'll be a lot more information that comes out of that project. So that's a little bit about what's going on with the counties. Councillor committee updates. Councillor Kittrus.
Thank you, Mayor. This budget passed by the county is more than we had scheduled in our budget. So I'm just wondering what the actual impact is for residents of Center Wellington in terms of percentage.
I think this was the same as what we had in our budget. It could have been, we could have had 3.4 initially when we first started talking about it, but it did go to 3.3. Yep, Dan?
In our 2020 draft budget, we had assumed 3.4% for the county, so it's gone down 0.1%.
Councillor McElwain, Councillor committee updates.
Thank you. For the Elora BIA, two important things. The first one is they have a new website. Elora.info has been now made opened up for the public, and it is a fantastic new website, really informative, and the type of website that keeps you on it, kind of thing. The other nice thing about, or the other big thing happening at the BIA starting this Friday is Eloralicious, 10 restaurants in 10 days, so with a fixed price menu, and all of them having a very special menu prepared for the event. The other thing that happened at the last BIA meeting was actually starting at the AGM in January, they had asked the county to provide signage on the north side of the bridge directing people down along Mill Street that everything was still open, and that has not happened. And as well as on the south side of the bridge, directing people how to get to the walking bridge from the parking lot, and that has not happened. So they are going to get back to they're going back to the county again, requesting that to happen as soon as possible. And then on top of that, the entrance feature that was being designed to be put beside the bridge, county reported that it was going to be put on the what would it be, the southwest corner of Metcalf on the south side of the bridge, which is kind of an unusual thing to have an entranceway of any sort on the left side of the road versus the right side of the road when you're entering. But on top of that, the BIA feels that it's going to impede vision of the back of Mill Street, which is a very popular photographer's view kind of thing, and it's going to get in the way, and it's but just being on the wrong side of the road is really the big thing. So they're going back to the county to ask to have that reviewed as well.
Yeah, all those things are news to me, so I'll follow up on it. Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Thank you. So I did not make it to the last economic development meeting. I missed that, and I'll leave that to Councillor Dunsmore for an update. That being said, Heritage Committee's been very busy. We've just actually Heritage Week just finished up. It was I think we finished off from the country from February 17th to 23rd was Heritage Week. And I don't know, we did some Heritage Awards. The mayor actually came and we kicked off that week. There was 3 awards that were done. Council, I'm not sure if you've seen the photos, but I don't have the names of the recipients, but one was Adaptive Reuse Using Sustainable Design Award, and that was on 37 McNabb Street in Elora. We also had a Heritage Property Conservation Award, which went to the Elora Mill Hotel and Spa. And then we also had Heritage Property Restoration Award, which was on 310 Union Street East in Fergus. So those 3 awards we presented at the beginning of Heritage Week. So that was good at the committee. The committee also is continuing to work to update themselves, and there is a workshop by Bert Duclos, I believe his name is, and it's I've put the information before you, council, to review and see if you'd like to attend. It's a meeting for the committee and possibly council to update themselves onto how they work within the committee. So it's a structured event, but that information is before you. And then also we have the cultural heritage landscape study as well that we continue to wait for. It's on the website. You can see that you can fill out the survey online. So just want to direct councillors and also the community that they can go on there and work with that survey as well. So Heritage has been very, very busy working through their plans and their public awareness and training. So going to continue with that into this year. So thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Van Leeuwen. Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Senator Wellington, Hydro, we are in the process of recruiting a new board member after the retirement of Keith Rosell, a very long-standing member of the board going right back to the Fergus Public Utilities Commission. So I want to give a shout out and a thank you to Keith for many, many years of service to the community. I'll be attending the Czech Hydro meeting on Thursday. That is, for those who are not aware, Czech is an advocacy group for independent electricity distributors in Ontario. And I'll have more to report on that after the meeting. Seniors Center, we have also elected a new chair, Brian Osmond, and a vice chair, Mary Bird, and a very busy place, lots and lots of activities for seniors available at the Victoria Park Seniors Center. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Councillor Kittrus?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have anything to report from meetings, but there will be a pancake breakfast in Mount Forest for the farm safety on March 7th.
Councillor Dunsmore?
Thank you, Mayor. The CSAC committee met to review and update the community grants application process. Resulted in a lively discussion, lots of good work, so we'll have something to come to council for that shortly. We also discussed item 8.1, which is on our agenda tonight, the Bissell Park. And I'll just let you know that committee was for the report that's coming forward. They had a good discussion about it, and they're happy with what's been proposed. The Economic Development Committee was thrilled to hear about the employment land purchase. They're very excited about getting started on that and seeing new businesses come forward. They also established an agribusiness committee, of which I agreed to be on that, and their emails are coming in as we speak about setting up the first meeting for that. One of the things that I was privileged to do this week was to travel with our Economic Development Officer to the University of Guelph for high-level discussions on utilizing that relationship with the University of Guelph and the facilities that they have here in the township, and trying to get that partnership to help other businesses, both agribusiness and other businesses in our community. So we're going to leverage those partnerships. It was a great discussion. They're very enthusiastic. They're willing to help in any way they can. So that was good news out of economic development.
Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. There were no meetings this week or this month for me.
Okay, thank you very much, councillors. Moving on to confirmation of the agenda, I'm going to ask, we want to add something to the agenda that came up a little later on after the agenda was released. You should have something on your tables. It's a request for tender for the reconstruction of Third Line West and replacement of structure 24P at Carroll Creek. There's a time sensitivity to this, and it did just came in. So are we okay to add that to the agenda today? Okay, so I have a recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington confirm the agenda as amended for the meeting held February 24th, 2020. Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McElwain. All in favor? And that is carried. We have minutes from our council meeting held on January 27th. So I have a recommendation that the minutes of the council meetings held January 27, 2020 be adopted as circulated. Move for that. Councillor Dunsmore, second by Councillor Van Leeuwen. Any question? All in favor? And that's carried. Report from the Committee of the Whole. Report, we have a number of items on there. I have a recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington approve the report from the Committee of the Whole dated February 18th, 2020 as circulated. Move for that recommendation. Councillor McElwain, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore, and all in favor? And that is carried. Moving right along to, we're going to have Pat, Community Services 8.1 first, talk about the Bissell Park MacDonald funding agreement, and then we're going to allow Tom Keating to come right after that because it's referring to the matter that Pat's going to introduce. So I'm going to turn it over to Pat first. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. So the recommendation before you is to accept the request from the Elora Rockers to be removed from the project as a recipient and signatory to the MacDonald funding agreement as it relates to the Bissell Park multi-use pad project. So we have a number of people in the audience, and I'll let Tom introduce who they are, but we have all of the recipients represented here tonight. Just to take you back in time, this is part of one of the MacDonald grant projects, and June 18th, 2018, the Elora Rockers and the Elora Lions Club were awarded $350,000 towards a project to upgrade the multi-surface pad at Bissell Park. At the August 26, 2019 council meeting, council approved adding Keating Construction, Inc. as a third recipient to the project. And as a condition of that, they were required to create a joint venture agreement to reflect the relationships of all three parties. On February 1st of this year, we received a letter from the Elora Rockers requesting that the Elora Rockers be removed as a recipient and signatory to the MacDonald Agreement and the joint venture agreement for the Bissell Park multi-use pad project. And that letter is attached to your report. So what's happened here, I'm going to let Tom kind of come up here and explain everything. But just a bit of the legal background was when we first received the letter from the Elora Rockers, it was assumed that they would remove themselves as signatory on both the joint venture agreement and the MacDonald agreement. Then after consultation with lawyers, it was felt that they could remain to sign the joint venture agreement, but would be removed from the MacDonald agreement between the township and the recipients in order to sign the agreement for the funding and the project. I think the main thing to let you know, which is really important, is the project is on track to be completed by the recipients in 2020. So we are moving forward and we have progress. It's a very exciting project for this community. So I'm going to ask Tom Keating, representing Keating Construction, to come up here. He's also one of the Elora Rockers and one of the brainchilds of this whole project. So I'll let him come up and tell you more.
Good evening, everyone. So just to review, the reason that the Rockers want to be removed is simply the Rockers aren't an incorporated corporation. So as we got into agreements, which when we made the initial application, we didn't even think we'd be signing agreements. We weren't sure what we were doing. We were asking for some money to do a project. And then when we got into the agreement side, we realized that as members of a hockey club or a sports association, we were all of a sudden personally liable if something was to go wrong. So at the end of the day, we had a partnership with the Lions Club that is incorporated. John Morris, local lawyer, as a Lions Club member, has reviewed the agreements and says, hey, this is simple, guys. We're incorporated, you're not. Let's remove you. We'll stay on and sign it so that, we'll keep this thing rolling. Made total sense as far as we were concerned. We apologize that we didn't think this through early on, but that whole legality side wasn't something we were even thinking about. But it keeps the project going. It by no means does it change the Rockers Sports Association's interest, desire to see this thing completed, and we're still ready, willing, and able to get involved. That's not going to change anything. It's just a piece of paperwork. So I don't know how much more detail you want me to go into. I can answer questions about where we're at and what we're when we want to get started. Happy to answer those. I guess when I have the mic and have the floor, the only thing that Dave Alves would probably like me to say is, geez, this has been a tough winter to make ice. So let's get what we've proposed to do done, and let's start thinking if we can save some money for a chiller, because these climates that we have aren't as conducive to making ice as they used to be, and there's a lot of people that love to get out there on that outdoor ice. So, but I'll open it up to questions if or anything else.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. Really appreciate the work that you and the whole team of Rockers and Keating are investing in this project. It's a really, really exciting project. Can't wait to see it start in the spring. So any questions from council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, question. It sounds like this is largely about limiting liability to a corporation. It brings up the question of risk management. Does the project have adequate insurance on it in case ever there were legal issues?
So, like I was introduced, I'm here representing both the Rockers and Keating Construction. So the reason that the company that founded by my dad that's here are involved is simply for that reason, that the Rockers don't have the ability to go to WSIB and do a notice of project. So we have volunteered our company to be the general contractor for this project. No different than if we were doing work at the Tourism Center under a Keating Construction umbrella. This is going to be a non-tendered project, which, we had to be careful in how we dealt with that, because we didn't want to think that the township was single sourcing Keating Construction to do this, because we're doing it at no cost. But the reason that Keating Construction had to get involved was to ensure that the due diligence was followed. So at the end of the day, Keating Construction is taking that responsibility. And so we'll be filing for the notice of project, which is before the project ever starts, and then making sure that there's proper site super on site to make sure that health and safety policies are adhered to. And then we have a waiver that, we still want to maintain a sweat equity component. We want to get involved as club members to help make the funding go as far as we can. We have a limited amount of money that we've applied for. We've had some great success by approaching some local companies and businesses, and they've offered money to put into it. But we want to see this thing go as far as we can, because we know we have another phase that ultimately we want to see this get to. So we're going to encourage that sweat equity component as much as we can, and we do have a form that we're going to have to make the people sign to just make sure everybody's butts are covered on this.
Thanks very much, Tom, and thanks, Pat. Looking forward to this project going ahead. So I have a recommendation here that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington accept the request from the Elora Rockers to be removed from the project as a recipient and signatory to the MacDonald funding agreement as it relates to the Bissell Park multi-use pad project. Move for that recommendation, Councillor McCrae, seconded by Councillor Van Leeuwen. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jim. Moving on, designation bylaw, 194 Barker Street in Fergus. And we have Brett's going to speak to that.
Thank you. This is a bylaw council approved moving forward with the designation back in January of 2019, and this is the bylaw now that it's been through the full process.
Any questions from council on this one? Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington confirm the designation of property municipally known as 195 Barker Street, Fergus, to be a property of cultural heritage value and/or interest pursuant to Section 29, Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that the corresponding bylaw be given 3 readings. Move for that recommendation, Councillor Van Leeuwen, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favor? And that is carried. get another property protected for its heritage value. Great to see. 8.3, request for proposal of development fees review. Report for our Managing Director of Corporate Services. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. This is request for proposal 10-20 regarding the preparation of a development fees review. The terms of reference look at, we were looking for an experienced and qualified consultant to undertake the development fees review, which includes a review and update of building permit fees, planning fees, and development engineering fees. The last time the township undertook this study was 2005, 2006. We are looking to determine full cost user fee rates in these areas, as well as recommended rates going forward. And this study also includes a review of the building department reserve fund in terms of use of the funds and target balances. We had 3 registered plan takers. Only 1 response was received. This is very specialized work. We did hear from one of the non-responses that workload played a factor in not responding, and the other registered plan taker that did not submit did not provide a reason why they did not submit. But we received the one response. The selection committee made up of the Managing Director of Planning and Development, the Chief Building Official, and the Engineering Technologist Development met and reviewed that response and are recommending award to Watson and Associates Economists Limited at an upset limit of $44,940 plus HST. There was an amount allocated to this project through the 2019 approved budget of $50,000. So this suggested upset limit plus non-rebate HST leaves us with roughly $4,300 left in that capital project. So we are recommending award of this project to Watson and Associates.
Thanks, Dan. Any questions from council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Dan, question. I know we have 3 chartered professional accountants on staff. We've got several high-quality building inspectors. I'm not in favor of hiring consultants yet again. Is there any reason we couldn't have done this in-house ourselves with our own staff?
Through Mayor Linton, in looking at the proposal received by Watson and knowing what's involved in doing this process, it's very, very labor-intensive. Workload of staff, both from a finance and from a building and planning perspective, wouldn't permit us to do this in-house. So we are recommending the use of a consultant.
Anything else from council? Okay, I'll read the recommendation. That the council of the, missed my place. That the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington award request for proposal 10-20 regarding the preparation of a development fees review to Watson and Associates Economists Limited at a total upset limit of $44,940 exclusive of HST. Mover for that recommendation, Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McCrae. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thanks, Dan. Moving on to 8.4, request for tender for the reconstruction of Princess Street in Elora.
This report relates to request for tender 03-20. The scope of work comprises of the replacement of the water main, installing new storm sewer, improving drainage, replacement of sections of sidewalk, new sanitary force mains, and granular base asphalt, with surface asphalt to follow in 2021. We had 27 registered plan takers. 6 responses were received, as outlined in my report. There were 2 corrected amounts within those 6 shown in brackets. The bids were checked for errors and omissions by Triton Engineering, and it is recommended to award this contract to J. Weber Contracting Limited at a contract price of $874,350, which includes contingency, excludes HST. I've attached a financial analysis to my report, attachment A, which shows that overall we are $10,170 over budget. But given the 3 different funding sources we have here, which is tax supported, water supported, wastewater supported, we are roughly 11,800 under budget for the roads and drainage, which is the tax-supported function of the project. We are $24,074.80 over budget for water supported, and we are roughly 2,000 under budget for wastewater supported. So given that we have separate funding sources here, one being over budget, we need to recommend increasing the water supported funding from the water capital reserve for an additional $24,074.80. And we are recommending award of this project to J. Weber Contracting Limited.
Great, thanks, Dan. Questions from council? Councillor McLean?
Dan, I just, in the cover letter, or the cover information, you mentioned that it includes a contingency allowance in the amount of 80,000. And if I read this correctly, it implies that the township allocates that $80,000 contingency fund as part of the tender. How do you come up with an $80,000 contingency fund when nobody's bid on it yet? I always thought that the contingency fund was identified by the people that win the business kind of thing, and they throw in a contingency amount. But we do it ourselves. It kind of defeats the purpose somewhat, does it not?
Through Mayor Linton, the contingency amount is recommended by our engineering consultants, Triton Engineering. We are setting the contingency based on their expertise and to ensure consistency across all of the tender amounts received. We find it more transparent to set that contingency amount for the tender itself so that each firm that wants to bid on this project knows upfront what that amount is.
Yes, McLean?
Thanks again. Just to follow up to that, then, do we ever have a situation where a contractor doesn't use all of the contingency? Or, I mean, if it's already built into the contract, they just include that as part of what they're going to charge overall? It seems like a backwards way of doing things, that's all.
Through Mayor Linton, you'll see as part of the cost breakdown, there's an amount there for contract administration, which is with Triton Engineering. Part of their role in this job is to act on our behalf to vet every request for change orders that go through this tender. So yes, we are consistently in situations where we're not using the entire contingency amount because we have that advocate in a contract administrator that works on our behalf in each case.
Councillor Kitchus?
Thank you, Mayor. So the contract, I thought we hired people to take over Triton Engineering's functions. We've added engineering staff, and we said we would be reducing those costs in the future. So I'm just wondering, that's a considerable amount for just this one project. And the total cost, what is the total cost for Triton Engineering?
Through Mayor Linton, so for this RFP, the contract administration budget is $90,000 and the township project management budget is $5,000. So yes, we are using both township staff and Triton Engineering in this case. And I would argue that some of the work that Triton Engineering used to do is now being offset by township staff. But you can see the proportion difference there of 90,000 versus 5,000. So we still very much need Triton Engineering in this case, but we're also relying on township staff.
Councillor Kitchus?
I was under the impression that when we hired that technician for the engineering, that we would be kind of reducing the amount that we'd be using Triton. So this looks like we haven't reduced it at all when you look at the proportions. So I'm just wondering how that works.
Andy?
Yeah, so the capital project manager, we do not have with all the projects we do, we don't have one person, staff person that can handle all the projects. So based on the complexity of the project, specifically in this one, with the underground work, we're relying more heavily on Triton. And then on some other projects, you would see it the opposite, where our project manager's overtaking the project and doing a majority of the capital of the administration. But this is a balancing and looking at all the projects that we're doing on a year and which work we would be able to do under Triton or which work we would be doing under ours. If we were to take on all of the capital projects within our capital budget for engineering, we would need 2 or 3 additional staff. And that's why we have a balance between trying to do as many projects as we can with the one individual for capital project that we've hired, and then bringing that in and supporting that from other agencies as well.
Anything else from council? Okay, I'll read the recommendation of the Council of the Township of Sunny Wellington award request for tender 03-20 regarding the reconstruction of Princess Street, Elora to J. Weber Contracting Limited at a contract price of $874,350, including contingency and excluding HST, and that the funding for the project be revised as outlined in report COR 2020-09 dated February 24th, 2020. Mover for that recommendation. Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McCray. All in favor? And that's carried. I know the folks living on Princess Street and Elora will be very pleased with that project moving ahead. Maybe not while the construction's going on, but when it's completed. 8.5 MTO Highway 6 Servicing Agreement. A report from Stephanie. Welcome, Stephanie. Sorry, I should have introduced your position now, all the hordes of people here. Stephanie's our asset management and our capital projects manager.
Thank you, Kelly. So the MTO servicing agreement before you, we are basically seeking approval from council to execute that agreement with the MTO, and that is to extend the water main and sanitary sewer north along Highway 6 within the MTO road allowance, and that would extend it up to Side Road 18 to connect into the existing water main and sanitary sewer at the Strathleigh subdivision. That would then create a loop basically in the water main and sanitary sewer system, which is best practice in the design of water mains, because the loop helps alleviate the risk of interruptions to the water supply. It improves water quality, and it also increases the available fire flow capacity. And also by extending the sanitary sewer north along Highway 6 up to Side Road 18, that gives us provision for future development to the north. So to give some background on this project, the Strathleigh water main and sanitary sewer construction was done in 3 phases, starting in 2014 and finishing off in February 2017. So since 2014, the township has been working with the MTO, meeting with them and talks and reviewing drawings to try to come to an agreement on the extension of township water main and sanitary sewer north along Highway 6 within the MTO road allowance. And you can see in attachment A an overview map that basically shows the layout of what we're proposing to do with the extension of services. So to give you an outline of the MTO agreement, which is also attached to the report, it basically protects the MTO by indemnifying the MTO against any claims associated with the work. MTO will be named as an additional insured on the construction, maintenance, or repair for any of the infrastructure done within the MTO road allowance. It also specifies that the township must provide advance notification to the MTO before starting the work, and that they must have all approvals and permits in hand before starting the construction or any future maintenance or repair work. It further specifies that all costs associated with the repair of the MTO infrastructure that arise as a result of the township's work, that any costs like that would be paid by the township. You'll see in the attachment of the report that the MTO encroachment permit also forms part of that overall MTO agreement, and the encroachment permit portion further notes the MTO's requirement for the construction of the infrastructure. Part of the attachment as well is the current design drawings, which are labeled as sample drawings, as they are still subject to MTO final approval, and the final construction drawings will form part of that final MTO agreement. So in short, to highlight, we are seeking council approval to execute the MTO agreement for the Highway 6 servicing extension, as it's an important component of the township's plans for long-term growth and development and for safe and effective provision of water and sanitary sewer infrastructure. The township plans to construct the sanitary sewer and water main infrastructure in this 2020 construction season, and that will be, of course, subject to the receipt of all required authorizations and permit approvals.
Thanks, Stephanie. And this was a long time coming.
Yes, since
Yeah,
2014.
this is a lot of work
Yes.
getting MTO to come to this point. Questions from council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Stephanie, I've had a number of residents contact me concerned about low water pressures, in particular on Courtney and Goodall Court. Will this loop help alleviate problems with low water pressure in the Busick subdivision?
So through you, Mayor Linton, the loop that we'll be creating will help alleviate some water pressure issues. It'll help increase the water pressure available to the Strathleigh subdivision, and it will also help by providing basically a secondary route for the water main. So if you imagine a water main break at one end of the water main service coming into the subdivision, it can still be served by this loop from the other side that we're creating that'll come in off of Highway 6 onto Side Road 18. So it provides a good backup water supply source to that subdivision, whereas currently there isn't one.
Councillor Dunsmore?
So I just want to be clear, this is what we've met with the Minister of Transportation on 3 times now, and we're finally getting somewhere?
Yes, so this was part of our, I think it was Roma and Amo that we've had this discussion with the minister. They've been helpful in helping us move this forward. I think since we've had that meeting, we've gotten further with the MTO than in the previous 4 years prior to that, so yes.
Councillor McCray?
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Stephanie, why are we cutting back across the road at Little Tree Nursery as opposed to continuing right up and crossing over at the Side Road 18 intersection?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Linton, with the previous initial versions of the layout and arrangement of the crossing, we did actually have the water main and sanitary sewer crossing at that intersection with Highway 6 and Side Road 18. But the MTO reviewed that, and they did not accept that previous initial layout because they were concerned that if they wanted to do future upgrades and improvements to the intersection of Highway 6 and Side Road 18, that there was potential for any infrastructure that had already been installed by the MTO or by the municipality within that intersection. It could interfere with any future changes and upgrades that the MTO might want to make to the intersection. So the MTO rejected that initial alignment and specifically advised us to move the crossing south of the intersection, which put it basically across onto the Little Tree property. Yep.
Any other questions, comments from council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Stephanie, will any other properties, for example, east of there have, will this work encapsulate the ability to hook on down the road for other properties, even if they're not currently in the urban boundary?
Through you, Mayor Linton, I think by extending the servicing north along Highway 6 does open the door for further future expansion to the north and east. That being said, it's always subject to MTO approval when we're working within the MTO road allowance, and so any future work and extensions, we would similarly have to go through the MTO for authorizations and approvals, expecting that the infrastructure, if it was within the MTO road allowance.
So just correct me if I'm wrong, just to confirm something. If we made any modifications to what what we have agreed to with MTO, and did attachments to other properties along the way, we have to go through that whole process with MTO all over again, correct?
Yes. So I would hope that it would be a more streamlined process, seeing as we've basically done all of this legwork. And when we get the final MTO agreement, it'll have these final construction drawings that they will have reviewed in depth. So they'll have basically the bulk of the work completed, and they'll be very familiar with the project and the layout and what's proposed. But yes, if we want to do any changes in the future that are within the MTO road allowance along Highway 6, we will again need MTO approval to do that.
Andy?
Just, I think from a time frame, as council's all aware, this is taking quite some time. Any change to the agreement, I think, would put us back outside of this year's construction schedule. So that's a key component for us, is making sure we get this. As Councillor Foster mentioned about some of the subdivision and the lack of water pressure, this is something, as you know, we've been feverishly lobbying the MTO to get this done, and we had wished this project actually had occurred several years ago.
Councillor Kitchus?
Thank you, Mayor. In these newer sheets that we received, can you explain the realignments that were proposed? And do we have to make a choice on that today, and also the additional property, is that a proposal for a development?
Sure. I think you're referring to a separate letter that was separate from the report, so I think Andy will speak to that.
Yeah, so just quickly, this is of interest to a certain landowner. The proposals that you're seeing from them are their proposals. We've not had an opportunity to take a look at this. We have spoken with the developer through their planning consultant, and Brett's met with them, Colin's met with them. We will continue to work with them, but clearly any of these proposals that they're proposing, they would have to also discuss with the MTO. So they're all available and on the discussion, but those are future servicing pieces that they want to look at, and we've told them that they need to, like the previous developer, speak to the MTO to look at what those options are.
Councillor Kitchus, follow up.
Thank you, Mayor. Would these future projects, would they be contributing development charges towards this project?
Not to the existing project. We would collect it through our general DC for water and wastewater services, so that would be a component of that. So we would see some funding towards this project, but this main line is actually to service the Bon Air and then to the future of it to the north. Anything on the east side, we'd have to see what that was from what type of construction and where it would be attaching to.
Okay, I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington authorize the Mayor and Clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Center Wellington and the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, MTO, to permit the Township to construct, operate, and maintain a water main and sanitary sewer within the MTO Highway 6 road allowance as outlined in report number IS 2020-09 dated February 24th, 2020. Mover for that recommendation, Councillor Foster, second by Councillor McElwain. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Stephanie.
Great, thanks.
Okay, moving on to 8.6, another request for proposal for the Fergus Wastewater Treatment Plant Secondary Digester Roof. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor Linton. This is request for proposal 15-20 for engineering services secondary digester roof replacement, Fergus Wastewater Treatment Plant. We were looking for experienced and qualified consultants to act as the township's representative on this project, which is replacing the secondary digester roof at the Fergus Wastewater Treatment Plant. Once we have this representative in place, then we can move on to the next stage of the project, which would be a proposal for a design build contractor for the roof itself. We had 18 registered plan takers. 3 responses were received that were reviewed by our selection committee made up of the Managing Director of Infrastructure Services and the Manager of Environmental Services. This selection committee looked at a number of criteria and have recommended award to CH2M Hill Canada Limited, carrying on business as Jacobs, in the upset amount of $134,560 plus HST. Through the 2019 budget, this project was given $2 million for the entire project. This represents the initial stages of that, and we will move on to that design build stage of the contract once this representative has been hired to work on the township's behalf.
Thanks, Dan. Questions from council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Question, I think, for Dino and Stephanie. Colin is not here. Dino, my question is, I have a couple of questions, actually. First of all, what is the advantage of a floating roof versus having a fixed roof on the digester?
Through you, Mayor Linton, the floating roof will allow for gas capture. Fixed roof does as well. However, floating roof provides for pressurization of that gas. It also allows for or inhibits the formation of foam and solids to sit up at the top. The third advantage for the floating roof is it is not a fixed vessel. So as you fill and empty this tank, it allows for fluctuation in the level, which if it was a fixed vessel, operationally it's difficult because it could either collapse or blow the roof off, one of the two.
Follow on, Councillor Foster?
Yes, 2 supplementary questions. Dino, had you fully considered a fixed roof?
Through you, Mayor Linton, a fixed roof is on the table through the options piece. It was priced out as part of the 50-year cumulative budgetary process. So it's still part of discussion, and however, the operational advantage of the stainless steel gas floater as well as the operational flexibility is kind of pushing it in the direction of that option at this time. We will continue to work with Jacobs to evaluate the options on the table, though.
Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Dino, my understanding is we're looking at replacing the plant in 5 or 6 years. Secondly, it's my understanding that most plants use a fixed roof across Ontario, and I don't understand why we're not doing that along with a booster to keep the pressure up. My understanding as well is that the fixed roof would be far less, perhaps $800,000 or $900,000, less than half the cost of the floating option. I'm therefore speaking against this recommendation. Your comments would be appreciated. That's my understanding. Half the cost or less, fully satisfactory performance, and that is what most plants use across Ontario. Why then would we hire a consultant to take the Cadillac option at almost triple the cost?
Yep, and through you, Mayor Linton, the process of this RFP is to evaluate the next, not evaluate the next steps, that's been done, is to go through the process of design build. It hasn't been a fixed decision yet, whether we're going with fixed or floating. That's still, again, up for evaluation. Many of the digesters in Ontario use a combination of fixed and floating. We have a fixed on our primary. I think through envisioning the addition or the expansion of the Fergus wastewater plant, there's quite possibly another fix that would be added. To have the operational advantage of the two in combination is ideal. So again, it's part of that operational decision that is kind of leaning towards the floating. However, this RFP is not to decide whether we're having fixed or floating. It's to decide on using Jacobs as our advocate consultant to help us do the next step, which would be a design build.
Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mayor. Is that what the RFP says for them? It says to evaluate the fixed or floating, or is it just to evaluate the floating?
The evaluation of fixed and floating has already kind of been completed. The options piece has been done by Jacobs. The RFP is to take the recommendations from that report, evaluate that report, and evaluate the options within that report to push to the next level of decision, and then obtaining a consultant, or not a consultant, sorry, a contractor to supply us with the roof of choice for them to oversee the construction, the inspection, and then the training and the inspection of, or the post-construction support as well.
Councillor Kittrus, follow-up?
So, really, we're going to go with the $2 million option. That's really basically, and so what Councillor Foster is saying is not really, it's not really an option at this point, really? Is that what the evaluation of this okaying, this consultant is for? That they're actually going to see what contractors can build the floating one? Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Linton, the award of this contract would be to evaluate the options piece that Jacobs has completed. They looked at membranes, they looked at fixed, they looked at fixed glass lined, they looked at floating, floating stainless, floating carbon steel. So they evaluated a bunch of different options. At the end of that report, there was no one decision that was pointed towards. So this would be to get to the next steps of making an ultimate decision on which roof that would be and hiring that contractor, working with that contractor to get us to the end game.
Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Thank you. So because there's a price tag attached to this, and really, are we looking at it, they're getting more in depth into the structure of the building, they're stepping in and doing a lot more. Kind of like if you were to look at a construction project, you begin with a design, what do we want to do, and then now they're getting into the nitty gritties, and that's why they really want to have more in-depth focus on this building. Is that really what this one is about, so that you can come up with a design build after that? Is that, clarify maybe?
Through you, Mayor Linton, I think that that next step would happen after we clean out this tank, which is a significant operational exercise. It's going to likely take place throughout this summer. It would be to further evaluate the options, not through physical means, not through destructive means of the structure, or actually emptying the structure and evaluating the existing roof. It would be going through the next steps of operational advantages on the roofs that are presented to us. Of course, the cost of the options that are presented to us. And yes, you're right, taking it to the next steps, but not through a physical means.
Andy?
Just to be clear, the budget is the $2 million. That's not the project cost for one roof or the other. I think we're getting hung up a little bit on what the budget is versus what we're asking for approval. This is exactly as you say, councillors, is to really look at the next steps, evaluate those in more detail, get some better costing from the contractors to be able to say if they propose a different type of roof or whatever, and does that work for us or not, and evaluate those construction bids so that we have a more detailed costing, which we're anticipating will come within the $2 million. But that's what this work is really about, is saying We budgeted 2 million, that's what we anticipate the project cost could be. But if there's ways, economy of scales, or building a different product, then we'll be reevaluating that as part of this design build evaluation. So the contractors will actually be bringing back designs, and we'll be evaluating those based on design, longevity, life cycle, as well as cost.
At the end of the day, I mean, it's clear, like, we're doing this work, and then if we're asking for a design bill, we still go through a procurement process that goes through council, and we have to take the lowest qualified bid. So that's where the safety is in our procurement process. This goes through the process, and this is just the front part of that. And it's all within budget. Councillor Foster?
Your Worship, I'd like to make a motion that we send this back to staff for review and that they fully investigate the fixed roof option with the booster station. It's my understanding that'll come in at less than $1 million. And that is also the standard across the province, where this one will come in at far over $2 million. So it's not so much budget, Andy, it's all about cost. So I've made a motion that we direct staff to fully investigate the fixed roof option with the booster station.
Okay, mover on the motion on the table, seconder. Councillor Kittrus? Comments? Yeah. Councillor McLean?
I mean, if that's what this request is already to do, is evaluating the fixed versus the floating, then I don't know that we need to direct staff to go back and do it. So what has been already done by whom to come up with this, you know, with a preferred option now? Who has done that background work and identified a floating as a preferred alternative?
Through you, Mayor Linton, Jacobs, CH2M Hill, the same consultant, has done that options piece. However, they haven't they haven't come up with floating as a preferred option. They provided us with all the options, and that next step is to evaluate those recommendations and to determine which of those options will move forward with the design build.
Councillor McLean?
My concern is, like Bob, if we go forward with the $134,000 bid from Jacobs for the second part of it, after they already did the first part, and at the end of that, they come to council with a recommendation to go with a floating, and our only option at that point is say yes or no, then it's too late. So I can understand why Bob's asking for this question, brought forward this motion is, shouldn't we, before we identify this who's going to do what here kind of thing, make sure we know which option is the one that we want to go forward with, instead of having this whole list of things out there, or even a preferred one. I don't understand why Jacobs did the first part and never came up with an option with a recommendation to begin with, and why we're going through a second proposal and a second contract for them to finish the work that they probably should have done the first time around.
Councillor Van Lund?
Thank you, and I guess through you, Mayor, Councillor McElwain, definitely reading the report, you see that it says this is stage 2 of the of this process. So it is definitely they're showing us that it's a 2-stage process through this, because I think that that's where our minds worked off right off the beginning, is that we're assuming stage 1 got us everywhere, but stage 2 is saying, okay, we need more in-depth design, pricing, all that kind of stuff that we go to. I think that the fact that you've scored also those people who are, or those companies and corporations who are working through this process. It's not that you just picked somebody and at random, but that you've shown us in this report that you scored the items, scored the company, how did they work through, and we're now working through the process until we get to exactly what Councillor Foster is saying. What is the successful, what is the design we want? I think that this report is doing exactly what we're looking for, and actually what Councillor Foster is looking for. Staff's going back to their consultant to say, what exactly is it that we should go with? The only thing that may be a little bit confusing here is that we need a two-stage process. So, but I can see you working through it as staff.
Andy?
So you're correct. It is a two-stage process. We did hire Jacobs to look at various options because we wanted to make sure we were covering all those options. As part of our procurement, and in order to spend the additional funding to look at from a design build, we had to go for an RFP. We couldn't just hire Jacobs on a one-off to go do that work. So that's why we actually have gone through a stage 3 in the fact that we had them look at some preliminary work, hired them for a small amount of money, and now we've done the RFP to take us to that stage. And then we would be evaluating those to see which will be best as part of a design build. Design build is not something the municipality does a lot of. We've tried it for a couple of projects. And so that's why we're looking at this to say that we can evaluate based on those contracted submitted bids what the best option is going to be.
Okay, anything new here? Councillor Kittrus?
Thank you, Mayor. I remember this project coming at budget time, and at that time, it was only the floating option that came to budget, and it was the price tag of $2 million. I didn't know anything about fixed roofs or anything. That information didn't come towards me as I was working on the budget. So that's why this motion is why it's about information. It's about, like, we didn't hear anything about a fixed roof option. And if Councillor Foster, who's done this research on his own, obviously that's not our job to do research, but he's done that to save money and to consider that. And so I remember it was $2 million. That was the price tag because it was a floating roof and we needed the floating roof. And there was no mention of a fixed roof. And so that's why it's new to me, but if we can save $1 million on a fixed roof, I think that's a valid reconsider, considering that probably 6 years, that whole sewage treatment plant has to expand and we'll have to be funding it by $20 million. So I think that this is a worthwhile, send back, and so that we can get that's another option on this. This second phase is to talk about the different floating options, and it's not about a fixed option because that wasn't presented to us in the beginning. It was always a floating option. So that's sort of how I see this second phase, because there's many different options on the floating option. So that's.
I just wanted to point out a couple things. The first thing is we're talking about in the future expanding the Fergus wastewater treatment plant, not replacing it. So we're not doing something now that's only going to be there for 5 to 6 years. So that's not on the table. That's not shouldn't be part of the discussion. So I think I'm glad that we have staff who have looked into this and know what they're doing. So I think I just wanted to clarify that one piece is that we're talking about expansion, not replacing what we're spending money on right now. Councillor Dunsmore?
Through you, Mayor, Dino, the current roof is a floating roof, right?
Yes, through you, Mayor Linton, it's a floating roof, and that's what.
So that's what I recall from the budget. The budget was to repair the floating roof. It's an existing floating roof. If we repair it with a fixed roof, that's fine. But the original budget said to repair the floating roof because it's a floating roof. So if that means we replace it, depending on what the consultant says, if we replace it with a fixed, that's fine. But it never targeted a floating roof because it already was one.
We got a motion on the table that we got to get to. You have anything new? Yeah, Councillor Van Leeuwen, and then we're gonna call the question on the motion.
Okay, before we call that question on, I do want to say thank you to Dino. It's sometimes we call into question staff's professionalism, and yet here we are. We ask staff to do work and to go out and get consultants. I can honestly say I'm not a digester roof professional, and therefore I have to lean heavily on staff's recommendation in that sense. So I don't think for me to take a budget in order to send you back with a design based off of me sitting here is what my job is as councillor, but to ask that as you go forward with your staff recommendations, that you take the most information and do the best job you can, which I believe you will. So I don't think that we should send you back with what we think, just based off of saving a few dollars. So I trust your professionalism. Thanks.
Okay, so the motion as it reads, Councillor Foster, make sure I got this right. The Council of the Township of Center Wellington refer the request for proposal number 15-20, Fergus Wastewater Treatment Plant, Secondary Digester Roof Consulting Services back to staff for a complete investigation on the fixed roof option with the booster for the Fergus Wastewater Treatment Plant, Secondary Digester Roof. Is that accurate?
With full costing included, and that it be done in-house by our own staff.
So that's something new you're adding. I've never heard that before.
I didn't catch that either, so.
So as long as the seconder is okay with that, Councillor Kitzer, you're okay with us doing all that internally, okay? All in favor? Opposed? And that fails. So now going back to our recommendation. No, I'm going to read the recommendation first. The recommendation, the Council of the Township of Center Wellington award request for proposal 15-20, engineering services, secondary digester roof replacement, Fergus Wastewater Treatment Plant to CH2M Hill Canada Limited, carrying on the business as Jacobs, at a total upset limit of $134,560 exclusive of HST. Mover for that recommendation, Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor Van Leeuwen. Any final comments that are new? Councillor Foster?
I'd like a recorded vote on this, Mr. Mayor.
For sure. We can do that here. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried, and I'll let our clerk go through the recording vote process.
Thanks, Lisa. Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Yes.
Councillor Foster?
No.
Councillor McElwain?
No.
Councillor McCrae?
Yes.
Councillor Kittredge?
No.
Councillor Dunsmore?
Yes.
And Mayor Linton?
Yes.
It is in fact carried.
Okay, moving on to 8.7, the Infrastructure Ontario Debenture Bylaw Report from our Managing Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, Dan. Welcome.
Thanks, Mayor Linton. This report is asking to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a debenture bylaw with Infrastructure Ontario, outlining the terms and conditions of the debt that we are about to issue for future employment lands located at 6518 First Line in Fergus. In January of 2020, Council approved the purchase of this land to be used for future employment land and serviced as such in the future. Also within January, Council passed a borrowing bylaw that outlined that we are allowed or eligible to borrow for this project. This is a separate debenture bylaw that outlines the terms and conditions of that debt. So it is a standard template bylaw provided by Infrastructure Ontario. It's been approved and vetted by our lawyers at SV Law. We are getting a very favorable interest rate of 2.48% per year, which is far better than all other debt that we have at the township at this point. Total debt payments per year for the next 20 years will be roughly $149,000, and this is 100% funded through the OLG Economic Development Reserve Fund, which currently has approximately $403,000 in it from allocations from 2019 proceeds from OLG.
Thanks, Dan. Questions from Council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. A question, Dan. In years past, cities and towns and townships would issue debentures directly to their citizens. Is that still an option? And if so, how might that work as it used to in the past? The advantage to me, Dan, the reason I'm asking is that way our own citizens would be holding the paper.
At this point, through bylaws and through the Municipal Act, we can borrow from Infrastructure Ontario and we can borrow from the Wellington County itself. So those are our two options to borrow at this point.
Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick supplementary, Dan. So there's no longer the ability for cities and towns to debenture out directly to citizens, as it was in the past?
Through Mayor Linton, I can confirm that with some background research and follow-up, but I know for the Township of Centre Wellington specifically, we have those two options that I mentioned earlier, and that's been passed through bylaw.
Okay, I'll read the recommendation here that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington authorize the purchase and implementation, oh no, wrong one. Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign a debentures bylaw outlining the terms from Infrastructure Ontario for borrowing funds for the purchase of future employment lands located at 6518 First Line in Fergus. Move for that recommendation. Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor McElwain. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to 8.8, sole source award asset management software. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor Linton. This report is recommending the purchase and implementation of citywide asset management software provided by Public Sector Digest. I've been in front of council a few times over the last few years outlining the new legislative requirements for asset management planning for municipalities in Ontario. In 2016, the legislation, the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act passed. And in 2017, the regulations associated with that act passed, making asset management planning a requirement for municipalities in Ontario. We have key deadlines that we have to meet through this legislation. The first was to have an asset management strategic policy in place by July 1st of 2019, and we achieved that with council passing that bylaw in early 2019. Staff are currently working towards the next two deadlines, which is by July 1st of 2021 to have an asset management plan in place that meets legislative requirements for core infrastructure, and for July 1st, 2023 to have an asset management plan that meets legislative requirements for all assets. With that, also in 2019, Council approved a report that was provided by KPMG, which looked at a service review of all Wellington County municipalities. Within that report, there was one of the top 20 recommendations through the KPMG report that we establish a county-wide asset management service delivery approach. From a staff perspective, we've been having many discussions with all municipalities within the county, including the county itself, on how we would achieve that. This is one of the initial stepping stones to achieving that county-wide asset management service delivery, where we feel it is highly beneficial for all municipalities in the county to use the same asset management software. With that, currently 4 of the 8 municipalities in Wellington County, being Minto, Erin, Wellington North, and Guelph-Aramasa, are currently using Citywide. The remaining 4 municipalities are in the process of obtaining Citywide software. I believe the Township of Mapleton had a report recommending award last week. And I know Wellington County and Puslinch are both working on this as well. I outlined a number of different functionality benefits to the Citywide software, but I just want to outline that there are 4 township assets. It provides us an ability to standardize and put within that model our risk assessments for our assets. We can do life cycle monitoring where we're tracking the different maintenance, repairs and maintenance and replacement needs of our assets. We can do a level of service projection, which is something that is new within the legislation, where we have to identify both current and expected levels of services for all of our assets, and has a number of reporting needs. There's a maintenance manager involved. That's module number 2, which is a work order management module, which is something that I know the Infrastructure Services Department and Community Services Department are looking forward to, where they can track service requests and maintenance requests either using assets or it's service requests on assets, where we can log these service requests and track them against assets, and it helps the operations staff do their day-to-day jobs, and it also provides minimum maintenance standards support, where it can do route patrol and allow assets to be monitored through minimum maintenance standards by the infrastructure services staff. We can also use a mobile app where we can track changes in assets or services requests in the field, which will be very beneficial and efficient for staff. And there's a bunch of reporting benefits to the maintenance manager as well. The third module is the capital planning and analysis module, which is a module that helps us take all the information from both the first two modules and implement a long-term plan and prioritization of our projects. This is something we're doing through the budget process now on an annual basis. This standardizes and automates this process, makes the budgeting process and the asset management planning process more efficient from a capital project prioritization perspective. We can determine funding needs in this module, and it supports the creation of tables and schedules that go into an asset management plan that we intend on developing internally going forward without the use of consultants, which will be a savings to the township as a direct result of having the ability to conduct all of our calculations within the software itself. The fourth component is a GIS function where this whole system will integrate in with our GIS software, so we can show assets, we can show long-term planning spatially on maps, and that's a good way to communicate out what the priorities of the township are and where they show visually on a map. So with those four modules, we'd be starting implementation in 2020 and hopefully concluding in 2021. I outlined that there are a number of benefits to doing this county-wide, as mentioned in the KPMG report, where we can coordinate our efforts from an implementation perspective. We can try to standardize the format of our asset management planning county-wide. The treasurers group at the county-wide level have been working really well together on asset management planning, and we'd like to continue to do that. And we're talking about inviting in other departments to help us with that and really make asset management planning a county-wide initiative. The township's purchasing bylaw does allow for negotiated procurement when one source of supply is uniquely qualified to perform the work. And in this case, from a compatibility perspective, Citywide is a software provider that is uniquely qualified in that 4 of the 8 municipalities are already using that software. The other 4 are not using software. And through demonstrations we've had to date, it's been very, very positive in terms of a review of the functionality of that software. In the 2020 budget and 2021-2022 forecast, we've allocated funds to asset management implementation, $145,000 in 2020, $120,000 in 2021, $20,000 in 2022. Through the funding of that, we have 70% of that funded through the provincial delivery monetization funds that was provided by the province for efforts to become more efficient and reduce expenditures and growth over the longer term. And there was a CAO report in 2019 that outlined that a recommendation that the remaining funds above and beyond that went towards the KPMG report would be used for implementation of the recommendations within that KPMG report, this being one of those. Through initial discussions with Public Sector Digest, we're looking at a scope of work of approximately $160,000 over the 2 years for implementation, and then we're looking at roughly $17,000 per year for annual maintenance and support. We're looking at efficiencies from a software perspective in that if functionality goes as planned, there may be other software that the township has been using for some time that may become redundant as a result of this software. So we may see some future savings from a software perspective as well. So with that and the direct benefit of being able to implement asset management county-wide, we're recommending the purchase and implementation of citywide asset management software as outlined in my report. And I'd happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Dan. I just wanted to confirm the funding source for a minute because So from the provincial modernization fund that we got from the province, 70%, and then water capital reserve 50, and then wastewater capital reserve 50. And so 100% is funded outside of the tax dollar?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Councillor McLean?
Thank you. Just the shared staffing, Dan, the way I read it, each township is going to run their own version of the software and do their own work, but you see maintenance of the software or support of the software being done then on a county-wide basis? Is that the sharing you kind of looking at?
Through Mayor Linton, what we're looking at is we can share implementation strategies in the early stages. In later stages, we can work on best practices together and have a consistent output in terms of an asset management plan. That's more of the efficiencies I think we'll see now versus the end of March. So it gives us an extra month leeway to get planning for this project underway. So this is for a request for tender 01-20, reconstruction of Third Line West and replacement of structure 24P Carroll Creek in the former township of Pilkington. Scope of work includes the replacement of structure 24P, including asphalt paving on the bridge approaches, as well as installation of a storm sewer to improve roadside drainage on the south side of the bridge. We had 25 registered plan takers on this request for tender. We do have a pre-qualified list that we participate in with the county for bridges and major structures that we've been in part of for 2 years now, and I could say it dramatically increased the interest in our structure tenders, and I think we're getting very competitive pricing as a result of that participation with the county. You can see the range of bids for the 6 firms outlined in my report. They were checked by Triton Engineering for errors and omissions, and there was one correction shown in brackets. Triton and staff are recommending award to Premier Concrete Inc. at a contract price of $1,720,565.94, including contingency and excluding HST. You'll see from my financial analysis that we have the tender results. We have anticipated contract administration of $138,000. We have bridge netting of $3,000, non-rebate HST of $32,800, costs incurred to date of roughly $8,200, representing a total anticipated project cost of just over $1.9 million. Through the 2020 approved budget, we have an allocation of $2.2 million, which is made up of OSIF funding, dedicated capital levy funding, and 10% growth related through development charges. We are roughly $297,000 under budget, which is great news, and I think it's a direct result of the competitiveness of the bids that we've received. So with that, we are recommending award to Premier Concrete Inc. for this tender.
It's nice to see a bridge project come in almost $300,000 under budget. That's always nice to see. Questions from council? Councillor McLean?
Thanks, Shelley. I don't understand how we justify $220,000 from development charges for this. How do development charges fit into this bridge that it doesn't seem to follow the regular?
Through Mayor Linton, we have only a few bridges in our DC study, and they all carry a 10%, a few existing bridges, let me clarify, that carry a 10% development charge allocation. And through our DC study, that's been set up as the fact that we have to upgrade the bridge itself to accommodate more traffic that is happening in that area due to growth. And like I said, there's only a few bridges in Center Wellington that are showing in the DC study, but it's because of that there are. It's not a replacement of a like-for-like bridge. It's an upgraded bridge to accommodate the traffic.
Okay, read the recommendation of the Council of the Township of Center Wellington award a request for tender 01-20 regarding the reconstruction of Third Line West and replacement of structure 24P at Carroll Creek to Premier Concrete Inc. at the contract price of $1,720,565.94, including contingency and excluding HST. Mover for that recommendation, Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McCray. All in favor? And that is carried. Thanks, Dan. No information items. We have bylaws listed there from 2020-06 to 2020-12, and I have a recommendation that bylaws 2020-6 through 2020-12 be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal affixed. Move for that recommendation. Councillor Dunsmore, second by Councillor Van Leeuwen. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to our motions. So we have Councillor McElwain has the notice of motion. And so just to remind folks how this works, I'll give the floor over to Councillor McElwain to read his motion and explain his motion. And if we get a seconder to that, and then we'll have discussion. Let every member of council speak once to the motion. The difference with a notice of a councillor motion versus a regular staff report is staff don't have commenting. This is a discussion between council, and no delegations are allowed to come for a notice of motion. So that's the way we'll do it. So without anything else, I'll pass things over to Councillor McElwain.
Thank you. Whereas there is considerable termite activity in a growing number of locations in Elora and Fergus, and whereas homeowners who have termite activity in their home are forced to pay thousands of dollars every few years to avoid further termite damage, and whereas council's approval of staff's recommendation to withdraw from home inspections for termites and to repeal the termite control bylaw and amend the township's property standards bylaw to incorporate pest control regulations did not include full withdrawal from termite management practices, and whereas the current options available to taxpayers is to utilize termite control programs offered by pest control companies that do not kill termites. In fact, they result in the termites spreading to untreated homes. And whereas Dr. Timothy Wiles has had considerable success through years of research and experimentation in Guelph with suppressive treatments involving spring and fall nematode treatments and or baiting, resulting in significant and steady decline in termite activity. And whereas Dr. Miles has set up a business called Termite Research Services, Inc. to offer his termite control services to other municipalities, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington directs staff to contact Dr. Miles and consider hiring his company to address the growing termite problem in Center Wellington, and further, that surplus from the 2019 budget be allocated to fund any termite control activity in 2020. So that, I think that the motion kind of explains the problem in reasonable detail already, but I have received a lot of comments over the last month, I guess, basically, about the issues from various citizens in Center Wellington that highlight the problem as being larger, I think, than most of us anticipated or realized, because I don't think that it seems that the real estate agents aren't necessarily identifying homes as having termite activity. In fact, there was one citizen who reported buying a home, and when they removed the staging furniture, discovering termite holes in the floor. There's other reports from people spending, $15,000 in the last few years just for termite treatment, not even excluding 100% the cost of repairs to their homes that are required from the termites. So it is a huge problem. It is an expanding problem. Since we passed our 2016 bylaw and we haven't really done anything, the maps are out of date that we have on our website. They're 2012 was the last time they're updated, and even then they only include the areas where township did the inspections. They don't include inspections by the third-party companies that are doing it, or potentially from homeowners that might report them, but not all homeowners do. As a matter of fact, I would say most of them probably don't. And we have new home developments going up that are close enough to existing termite activity that they're probably going to be impacted in the not too distant future, because it's amazing how quickly they have expanded on the south side of the river here in Elora since, I mean, just in the last 15 years, from zero to massive on Water Street, McNabb Street, and even beyond that. So they do move really quickly if they aren't killed and trapped and destroyed like Dr. Wiles has successfully done in Guelph. And his success that was reported last year was down to something like, what did he say? 2011, there were 104 properties with identified property, and this time it was much smaller number. There's like 8 or something left now. He's almost exterminated them. I believe since then they found another block with some termite activity, so he'll be working on that, but he's only working part-time now at Guelph. So I think the time is right for us to get back involved in it and do it properly. I specifically mentioned the using the surplus from 2019 as a budget for budget, because we didn't include it in the budget this year, and any surplus has not been allocated at this point, so it's the opportunity to find some place to do some spending this year, and get Dr. Wiles and our existing. There's 3 other companies that work here in Elora and Fergus already with termite control, and get all of them to work. I have a lot of reports back from citizens who say, we'd love to work with somebody if there's a program in place and help control it, but we need the township to kind of lead the process, particularly in things like mulch distribution. I mean, there is nobody monitoring what kind of mulch goes in the termite activity areas right now, and that's a huge. We're just feeding them and attracting them with putting the wrong mulch into the termite areas. So we need to have some kind of a program to monitor and report, and hopefully to start actually catching and killing. Thank you.
Seconder? You gonna second it? Councillor Foster? Okay, we'll go around the room and everybody can speak to this. Who wants to go first? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Friends, I'd like to speak in favor of this motion for a number of reasons. I come from a perspective of living in Guelph in the 1990s in Exhibition Park, and my neighbors along Woolwich. The onset of this problem in Guelph started in those years in the Victory School District, and so I saw firsthand my neighbors struggle with termites in Guelph along the corridor into the city. I also know from those years that Dr. Wiles was highly effective. He is an entomologist. He's a subject matter expert. I spoke with Mayor Cam Guthrie one day this week, and he had nothing but praise for Dr. Wiles, and he affirmed the program was highly effective in the city of Guelph. I've got a number of residents in Ward 3 who are affected by this problem. Several are here tonight. I want to acknowledge Tammy Rutherford for her work on this issue, leading it and doing a good job on it. And this, friends, is a time for collective action. We can help our residents and help our citizens and get this problem solved. So I want to support this motion, and I encourage all of us to do so. Thank you.
Who wants to speak next to this? Councillor Dunsmore.
So I support the residents who are struggling with this issue. My problem is actually with the motion, and I'm thinking we can get around my problems with the motion if we make some friendly amendments to it. My problem is that we're identifying a sole individual to fix the problem, and he may very well be that person. I don't have any numbers associated with this, so I don't know how much money we're authorizing tonight. And the other one is you've got a surplus for 2020, and I don't know that we have a surplus identified yet for 2020, or 2019. So our own purchasing bylaw has laid out for us, if we're over, for service and projects, 25,000, it has to go to a formal quote process, and any amounts over 75,000 have to go through a tendering process. And even hiring a consultant, it's over $10,000. Now, I've received information from some residents that they paid $3,000, $4,000, $15,000, $20,000. So it adds up when we start adding up all the houses. So I'm for helping them, but what we need is for staff to come back with a detailed report as to who's out there that can solve the problem, what that looks like financially for the taxpayers of Center Wellington, and where that money is going to come from, whether it's in this current budget, what comes out to replace it, or if it's in next year's budget, where we come up for the money for it. And I would be, if you're willing to amend that motion to send it back for study so we get a detailed report with the financial implications, I would support this. So then I need to make a motion to amend the motion, is that right?
You have to make a motion to refer this to staff, and you can do that right now.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we refer this to staff so that we understand the financial implications of doing this, and that it be returned to council within the next 3 months. Can we get it done that fast?
My question would be, what do you want to come off our project list that we have our strategic plan trying to do? So it's just a matter of workload, or the fact that I would say probably closer to 3 to 6 months to be able to look at all those and the financials. We won't know the year-end surplus for another 2 or 3 months for sure.
Right, but if you can do a report and we can have numbers, and then we can decide what comes off the budget, or is that possible?
Yeah, because it's not a deferral.
It's a referral, okay. Okay, so we have a referral from Councillor Dunsmore, so we have to deal with the referral. Is there a seconder for the referral? Councillor McCray. And I've just been informed that we can do discussion on a referral. So we can. We can't do discussion on a deferral, we can do discussion on a referral, just so we all know that from now on. Councillor Van Leeuwen.
Referring to Councillor Dunsmore's discussion there, it's interesting because I had kind of reading through this, I don't have any concerns with it, with helping out, and I actually looked at this going, we should give staff direction of what we'd like to look at as well. So why did council stop doing inspections in the past? How can they take a lead? How could township take a lead in the program to deal with termites as a whole, not individually, so that we're not doing little termites inspections, and the financial implications to the township. So it rides very much in line with where Councillor Dunsmore would. But I'd like to make sure that we understand that why did we stop in the past, and how do we just take a lead format to it. I think that needs to be clear what we're looking for, not just refer to staff.
Councillor McCray? I'm going to let everybody talk first. Councillor McCray?
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. I actually prepared something, so I'm going to read it. So I agree with Councillor McElwain that we have a termite problem that we need to address. First and foremost, as a property owner, the township is required under our Clean Yards and Property Standards bylaws to keep its property free from termite infestation. Is this happening? We cannot expect property owners to clean up their properties while termites are allowed to gather on adjacent township lands. Second, I do not recommend sole sourcing work without knowing who else is available and capable. Third, is it fiscally irresponsible to allocate all remaining funds from our 2019 budget without knowing how much money is left, and also how much will it cost to hire Dr. Myers or someone else? Fourth, the motion only deals with treatment for 2020. Given the extent of our property holdings that are infested, we need to consider a multi-year program with a sustainable source of funding such as the OLG funds. We cannot blindly throw away money at a problem for only 1 year without knowing the full extent of the challenge facing us, as well as our approach. We need to be smart in our path that is cost-effective and delivers results. Where I see opportunity in Councillor McElwain's motion, assuming he is amenable to proposed changes, is to invite Dr. Wiles to meet with Council and staff to discuss his broad-scale strategy for dealing with our termite issue. I see this approach as an opportunity to educate Council and staff on the challenges we face and the path we need to consider. Staff will then be asked to search for other firms who offer similar broad-scale invasive species management programs as part of our tendering process. Chatting with a biology professor who studies termites, our approach needs to focus on block-by-block treatments, i.e. broad-scale, rather than individual properties. We are dealing with a super colony that is more resistant to individual property treatments. Councillor McElwain's motion should also instruct staff to prepare a report outlining our multi-year strategy to eradicate these termites and the cost. Countries, municipalities, and industry have developed effective invasive species management techniques, better than those we have followed to date. Guelph's strategy is an example of an effective strategy. Most importantly, we will adopt a winning attitude. We cannot approach this challenge thinking we are beaten before we start. Other groups have been successful, so why should we be different? The following are examples of approaches taken in other successful campaigns that we could consider in our overall strategy. Review all current bylaws and policies related to termites with the focus on altering individual property owner behavior, either by changing how the issue is perceived or by altering the consequences of a decision. Tools can be information-based or consequences-based. Controlling the movement of termites, maintaining effective quarantine requires constant vigilance as well as cooperation from all residents. Adopting a proactive rather than complaints-based enforcement of these termite-related bylaws. We have to stay ahead of the challenge. Restrict within the township the sale and use of landscape materials conducive to termite development, such as mulch, wood and railroad ties. Identify required disposal techniques for termite-infested material that may require the presence of refuse bins at the Elora landfill site where residents can deliver their contaminated material. The contents would be shipped to a landfill site that accepts termite-laden material or else destroyed through incineration. Quarantine containment measures to restrict the movement of plant material and wood products from termite-infested areas, such as wooden doghouses, chicken coops, garden sheds. Enforce treatment for termites in affected areas. Residents will be required to notify staff of infestation and to provide updates on inspection and treatment results. This requirement is essential to identify where the outbreaks are and to track our success in eradicating them. Considered a shared cost model with impacted residents to attain a consistent standard of treatment across the private spectrum. Public management is required to ensure appropriate levels of termite management to achieve our eradication objectives. This approach could include, through a tendering process, hiring one firm to provide the preferred standard of termite inspection and treatment to which each impacted homeowner would contribute a portion of the fee based on a means test. Every infested property will be treated. Developing a termite website similar to Guelph's that educates, informs, and promotes compliance. Conducting a new field survey to identify all termite-impacted areas within our urban boundary. This information will update our termite maps that will be used to plan termite eradication efforts and track our removal of the termites. Commit to a multi-year program, perhaps starting at 12 years, to ensure no deviation from our path. This time frame will have to consider the number of years to continue monitoring after an area is declared termite-free to ensure no setbacks. Identify the type of surveillance programs to monitor for termite activity. This program could include resident submission of termite inspection reports. This is a partial list, but hopefully you have an appreciation for the level of effort required to win this campaign. So I encourage Councillor McElwain to consider my proposed changes and whether or not he's willing to accept them.
Okay, so just a reminder, we have, what we're talking about now is a referral. So if you have any additional comments that you didn't have before, we're talking about referring this to staff. So I want to hear people's opinion on whether staff should be involved in this debate or not. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. With all due respect to my good friends Neil and Ian, I think most of your objections are dealt with in the resolution here, the second last line in the motion. And that is, we're directing staff to contact and to consider hiring. We're not bound to hire. We're going to contact and consider hiring. And a professional will give us a report and do exactly the things you're asking for in your proposed amendments. Therefore, I would like to speak against the amendments and stand with the original motion. Thank you.
Councillor Kitchus?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor McElwain for bringing this forward. The problem of termites is not a individual homeowner problem. It is a problem that is a community problem, because you can treat your home and then your neighbor gets them. And so we have a policy in place, but the policy is kind of a laissez-faire policy. We had a policy, we're not doing inspections anymore, now it's left to homeowners to do what they can about their termites. And so the policy needs to be addressed, and that is a different issue of what we're talking about right now. Right now, what it is we have a problem. It's a community-based problem, and it's coming forward in a notice of motion. And the notice of motions they're like the highest form of democracy, where citizens are listened to and it's brought forward because it's a real problem. And the suggestions here to use the 2019 budget, I think are very good suggestions, because we've had surpluses since probably 2003 to 2018 almost every year on our operating. And I think only 1 year we had it didn't. So it's quite regularly we have surpluses on the operating. And we automatically, this is an operating budget problem. It's a problem that we need to address, and we have the funds over the period, the history of this. So as Councillor Foster said, this says we are going to contact and consider. We're not hiring him right away. And it's about, Councillor McCrae said about inviting him. Well, yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. But we're going to make the decision to do that and listen to him. We're not hiring him officially. So that's quite clear here. But he has had tremendous success in Guelph. And it does involve exactly what you're saying, Councillor McCrae. But it sounds like you're writing the policy right now. But we're not, we're going to ask somebody that might help with that. And that's what this motion is about. I support this motion fully. I think this is being very proactive and very responsive to what is a serious community devastation. By having a policy and neglecting it over the last, since 5 years, it has resulted in a massive spread. And this is how this can be solved, by having the funds. We know we have funds. Every year we have surpluses. I've been looking at the budget and studying it in my short period of time, but I've asked about how long we've had surpluses, and we've had surpluses for many, many years on the operating budget. And so I think this is a very wise and motion, and I support. I don't support the revisions because it's just delaying the matter. We know we have funds available. We know it's a serious problem, and I support Councillor McElrain's motion.
I just want to say a couple things too. I just want to clarify, the notice of motion says that we repealed the termite control bylaw, and council did not repeal the termite bylaw, just to be clear. The only thing that we stopped doing in 2015 was termite inspections. So that's the only change that happened in 2015. And some of the reasons why that was done, and this is why I'm favorable of going to back to staff, because as Councillor McCrae indicated, there's a number of things that have to be looked at, not just about whether or not we hire an expert to do some stuff. There's a whole suite of questions that have to be answered that currently are, and we need staff's advice on this. They came in 2015 with some reasons. One of the things is we found we were competing as private sector termite specialists, and the termite specialists were better than us at what they do because they're specialists. So that didn't really make sense. So we stopped doing that in 2015. We weren't recovering our costs. This was being borne by the taxpayer. So as a council, we have to have an understanding of what the cost is for moving ahead. We can't move ahead without knowing what the cost is. That's not good stewardship of taxpayers' money, because in order to, like we're saying, in the motion is saying we'll contact Dr. Myers and further that surplus. So we're trying to have it both ways, whereas it should be coming from staff. To do this effectively, these are the suite of costs that you're going to have to do this right, and then council should be making a decision. And maybe it is a different decision than in 2015, but we don't have all the information. There's a number of outstanding questions. You know, of the 30-plus municipalities that do have known termites, only 4 of them, CW, Guelph, Kitchener, and Kincardine, have termite control bylaws in place. So already we're doing something that majority of municipalities aren't doing. We are enforcing building code related termite requirements. We are enforcing property standard termite related requirements. And we are doing education and communication related to termite awareness programs. So there are things in the works that we're doing. Maybe it isn't enough. Maybe we have to go back. We need staff's opinion about how much it's going to cost. Okay, so I'm very supportive of referral back to staff. We need all the information here, and it's the best way to do that is to let this go through staff. When it goes through a staff report, it comes back to council. Then there's delegations from the community can come and talk to us at that point as well. So you know, that's my feeling is we can't move ahead with something when we have no idea what the cost has been to residents of Guelph. We have to figure that out, and we have to do a little bit of research. And we don't have that at this time through a notice of motion, through a councillor motion. So I would be also in favor of a referral. Councillor McElrain?
Thank you. First off, I'm looking at the recommendation that came to council in February 16th, 2016. And it says, in addition, staff are recommending the following measures: repeal the termite control bylaw and amend the township's property standards bylaw to incorporate pest control regulations. Did we not pass that?
So just to confirm, we put those pest related into another bylaw?
Into the property standards.
Yes.
Put it into the property standards bylaw. Okay.
Yeah, so we repealed the termite control bylaw. We don't have one anymore.
They were incorporated.
They were incorporated into the property standards.
No, we incorporated a few little lines in the property standards bylaw. It's minimal. I've got it here. So it's not a termite control bylaw by any stretch of the imagination. And it puts all of the stress back on the homeowner to make sure the yard is clean and to do this and do that. It has nothing to do with the township termite control bylaw. So it is repealed. We don't have one. So that was the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention is that I did request staff to incorporate this in their budget discussions. Last June was the first time. I did it again in September because I thought we should go through that process. I also provided an estimate from Dr. Wiles on what it was going to cost to do the work. And so staff has those numbers already. And so I don't know, we can send it back to staff and take 3 to 6 months or something, and probably the surplus will be already spent by the time it gets back to us again, and we'll have to delay it for another year of termite expansion in Center Wellington. So I don't agree with the deferral at all, or referral at all. I think that we need to go ahead starting tonight and start to work. I mean, it could be that Dr. Wiles comes back to us and says, I can't work with you guys right now because I'm up to my ass in wherever, because they've been talking to Woolwich and they've been talking to Kitchener. So he may not have time to do it now, but at least he can perhaps lead us in the right direction of somebody else that does have the skills, because I've talked to the local control companies, and they don't approach it this way at all. All they do is put stuff in the ground to protect individual homes. And as somebody already pointed out, it's done block by Dr. Wiles, and you exterminate them within a given area. You don't do them at a home at a time. So any delay is a costly delay for the residents of Center Wellington, and I don't think we should even consider that.
Okay, this is a council discussion, so really the clapping and the stuff is really not part of the discussion here. We have to follow certain protocols.
You're in debate.
Okay, we're in debate here, okay? Anything, Councillor McCrae?
Councillor McElwain, I don't recall you commenting about termites during the budget discussion, so I'm curious to know, what did Dr. Wiles tell you in terms of the costs? Is that for 1 year? Is that for the entire program? Because he's been at it for 12 years.
Okay, sorry, we have to deal with the referral. So if we want staff to play a role in this, let's do. We've already had a discussion. We've already had an opportunity to each talk about the referral. I'm going to call the question about the referral because that's what we have on the table right now.
If I might, though, just point out that the motion does, I would like to point out, as Bob has already done, the motion does include working with staff. It doesn't direct staff to actually do something. It asks them to talk to Dr. Wiles and come up with a report, not to do anything else at this point. So the referral is not doing a lot different than that.
And I think that has been pointed out, that is included in your notice of motion as the second last sentence. What has been pointed out to the mover and seconder of the referral option is that there's things other than contacting Dr. Wiles that they want staff to have a consideration on. I'd also like to hear from the industry experts. I'd also like to have them come and talk to us about some leading practices when it comes to termites. And without going through that, I don't think we should go, my vote is not to go down a process before we have all the information, financial and otherwise. Any other discussion about the referral? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have an entomologist on staff. Dr. Wiles is an entomologist. He's an expert. We often hire a consultant when we have our own experts. We hire consultants to do some of our cost accounting. We hire consultants to do some of our engineering. I don't see why we're hesitating in hiring someone who's a specialist in the field of entomology. Therefore, I'm speaking to the amendment that in my view, will not accomplish the objective. We need to take action, and we need to take it now. And I think we need to stand with the motion as it was tabled.
Anything new? Councillor Van
Actually, just in regards to this, I really think that we see all of council looking towards the fact of wanting to do something here. I think that the referral back captures that opportunity, and I'm a little shocked that we're arguing over. I think the residents should be excited in the sense that we are looking at and bringing it back to staff to say, let's look at this, let's deal with this, and get us the best plan possible. And the funding cost, I just have concerns with how it's written, that says that the surplus and aspects of that. So, because it could be a huge amount or it could be a very little amount. So that's where it comes back to. I think that getting better information would be a good thing to do, and the referral will get the township, the residents, what they need as well. So I'm in favor of that referral.
What's the timeline of this referral?
I believe I asked for 3 months, which would take it to May, right?
Yeah.
Is that when a report's coming and everything?
That's what I've asked for.
Okay. So we have to deal with the referral. All in favor of the referral? Opposed? Okay, so the referral carries. So then what do we do with the other motion?
Nope, it stays there.
Okay, that's that. So I think we've heard the discussion, we've heard what the residents have to say. Council has decided to move ahead and have staff have an opportunity to bring experts in and to develop a fulsome report so that we can help residents deal with this in the right way. We have another notice of motion. He doesn't read it.
No, no.
So notice of motion that is included in your package from Councillor Kittredge, and that will be on the agenda for the March council meeting. Okay, 13.1. Recommendation of the bylaw 2020-13 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held February 24th, 2020 be introduced the first, second, and third time and pass in open council. Move for that report, that bylaw. Councillor Van Leeuwen, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? Opposed? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Kittredge, seconded by Councillor Van Leeuwen. All in favor? We are adjourned. Have a good rest of the night. Thanks for coming out.